Saying no might seem like a simple task, but for many people, it's a real emotional dilemma. How many times have you agreed to a request you didn't want to fulfill just to avoid the discomfort of saying no? Whether in the workplace, in family relationships, or among friends, the difficulty in setting boundaries can lead to frustration, overload, and even resentment. The fear of rejection, guilt, and the need to please are powerful forces that push us into a passive stance. Many believe that denying something to someone is a sign of selfishness or lack of empathy. But what if I told you that learning to say no firmly and respectfully is one of the most important skills to maintain healthy relationships and preserve your psychological well-being? In this video, we will explore the psychology behind the difficulty of setting boundaries and understand why saying no doesn't have to be a burden. You will learn practical techniques based on scientific studies to communicate assertively without guilt or fear. By the end, you will have the tools to stand your ground with confidence and gain more respect without compromising your authenticity. Now, to better understand this dilemma, we need to dive into the psychology of the fear of saying no. Why is saying no so difficult? The answer is rooted in our own biology and the social patterns that shape our behavior from childhood. Humans are a social species, and acceptance by the group has always been essential for survival. In the past, being excluded meant being vulnerable to danger. Today, although the threats have changed, the fear of rejection still influences our decisions. Our brain interprets rejection similarly to physical pain. Neuroscience studies show that the activation of the anterior cingulate cortex, the same area that processes physical pain, also occurs when we are excluded or disapproved of. This explains why many people avoid saying no. The fear of conflict or disapproval can be unconsciously painful. Furthermore, from an early age, we learn that being good means pleasing others. Phrases like "be nice," "don't say no to adults," or "do this so you don't hurt anyone" create a mental pattern where one's own needs are secondary. This behavior leads to people-pleasing, where a person feels compelled to always please, even at the expense of their own well-being. But there is a difference between being polite and being submissive. To gain respect and emotional balance, it's important to understand that saying no is not an attack, but a right. And for this, it's essential to understand the difference between assertiveness and aggressiveness. One of the reasons many people avoid saying no is the fear of appearing rude or aggressive. However, there is a big difference between being assertive and being aggressive. While aggressiveness imposes desires without considering the other, assertiveness communicates needs clearly and respectfully. Assertive communication is based on balance. A passive person constantly gives in, neglecting their own needs. An aggressive person imposes themselves in a dominating manner, disregarding the feelings of others. Assertiveness, on the other hand, allows you to express yourself firmly without losing empathy. Imagine a scenario at work. Your boss asks you to take on an extra task at the last minute. Passive accepts, even knowing that this will compromise their time and energy. Aggressive responds harshly, refusing without consideration. Assertive politely communicates that they already have other commitments and cannot take on more tasks at the moment. Being assertive is not about being cold or insensitive, but about setting boundaries respectfully. Now that we understand this difference, let's move on to the psychological strategies that can help you say no without guilt. Knowing that saying no is necessary doesn't make the practice any easier. Often, guilt and fear still speak louder. However, there are psychological strategies that can help you set boundaries firmly and respectfully. Here are some of the most effective ones. Replace guilt with clarity. Guilt arises when we believe we're doing something wrong, but saying no to an unfair or inconvenient request is not a mistake. It's a right. Whenever you feel guilty, ask yourself, if someone else were in my position, would I expect them to say yes? Often we'll realize that the honest answer would be no. Use the broken record technique. This technique involves calmly and consistently repeating your response. If someone insists, you stand firm without over-explaining. For example, "I understand you need this, but unfortunately I can't help right now. I would like to help, but I really can't take this on at the moment." By repeating your response gently, the other person will realize that insisting won't change your decision. Make a positive refusal. Often, a direct no can seem harsh, so framing it in a positive way helps soften the refusal. For example, instead of saying, "I can't help you with that," say, "I'd love to help, but my schedule is full at the moment." Instead of "I don't want to go out today," say, "I prefer to rest today, but we can reschedule for another day." This way, you remain firm without seeming indifferent. Learn to tolerate discomfort. Saying no can cause initial discomfort, but remember, prioritizing your needs doesn't mean being selfish. Every time you stand your ground, your brain gets used to the new response, making the process feel more natural. The 3-second rule: if you find it difficult to decline requests, practice a simple rule. Before responding, take a deep breath and count to 3. This prevents automatic responses and gives you time to formulate a more confident refusal. With these strategies, you can start saying no without guilt. Even with all the strategies, it's normal to feel an emotional weight after saying no, especially if you have the habit of pleasing others. However, guilt should not be a reason to backtrack on your decision. To deal with this feeling, you need to reprogram your mindset and change how you view the act of setting boundaries. Reflect on the real need to say yes. Whenever guilt arises, ask yourself, if I had said yes, how would I feel now? Often, upon reflection, we realize that giving in would have led to frustration, overload, or even resentment. This reinforces the importance of sticking to your decision. Understand that the reaction of others is not your responsibility. When you say no, some people may show dissatisfaction, but that doesn't mean you did something wrong. Everyone is responsible for their own emotions. If someone gets upset because you set a boundary, it reflects more about their expectations than about your decision. Replace guilt with self-affirmation. Instead of thinking, I was selfish for refusing, try reframing it to, I deserve to respect my own limits. How you interpret the situation directly influences your emotions. Be kind to yourself. Accept discomfort as part of the process. At first, saying no may feel uncomfortable, but this discomfort diminishes with practice. Remember that emotional growth often requires stepping out of your comfort zone. Each time you set a boundary, you strengthen your self-confidence. Evaluate your progress. Reflect on the times when you successfully said no and notice the benefits it brought. Did you feel more control over your life? Did you avoid unnecessary stress? Reinforcing these positive aspects helps reduce guilt over time. Saying no is not an act of selfishness, but an exercise in self-respect. Throughout this video, we explored the psychological reasons behind the fear of setting boundaries, the difference between assertiveness and aggressiveness, as well as practical strategies for declining requests without guilt. Understanding and applying these concepts not only improves your communication, but also strengthens your self-esteem and reduces the emotional toll caused by the constant need to please others. By practicing strategic kindness, you discover that it is possible to be a kind person without sacrificing yourself. Being firm in your decisions doesn't mean being cold or indifferent, but rather recognizing your own needs as legitimate. And when you learn to set healthy boundaries, others will begin to respect them too. If this video resonated with you, reflect. How many times have you said yes when you actually wanted to say no? How did this affect your energy, time, and peace of mind? Now that you have effective tools, how about starting to apply them in your life? Change begins with small daily decisions. The next time you feel the need to accept something out of obligation, stop, breathe, and ask yourself, is this aligned with what I really want? If the answer is no, remember, you have the right to decline without guilt. If you enjoyed this content and want to learn more about personal development and psychology, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your comment. How do you handle the difficulty of saying no? Share your experience.